Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, we are coming to you live here on a Sunday morning before what is obviously known as the greatest spectacle in racing. And that's right, guys. So after that atrocious Game 7 from the Detroit Pistons, we took time, we digested it, we thought it over, and we figured we'd just transition this over full time and do an IndyCar-centric podcast, Blake. So what we're going to do, we're just going to start talking about the Indianapolis 500 today. I got my Joseph Newgarden little shirt on. I'm ready to roll. I'm excited. And Blake, I was curious, who are you looking for on this race today? Do you have any underdog, a name to watch, so to speak?
I would be lying if I even gave you, I guess I got to pull for Newgarden because I think that's who you're pulling for. But yeah, Wes was, we were talking about when we were going to record, and Wes was mentioning I want to watch the 500. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't think I understand your text. I totally forgot that this is the weekend for the Indy 500, which is sad because I've actually been to it before. I looked up the racers and hey, I recognize Helio Castroneves, but I don't think he's an under the radar name. So.
Elio Castroneves.
No.
And he's I don't want to say, he's not necessarily a retiree, but he's just a one-off. He's just doing the race because he wants to go get, I think it would be maybe his third or fourth win. But he's an old school name. You're looking at Alex Palou maybe going back to back. He's starting off on the pole. Joseph Newgarden won 2 in a row and then didn't win it last year, even though he was moving from the back. Could happen again. He's looked like he had a quick car. I'm looking at maybe Christian Rasmussen could be a fun name to watch, but maybe we should talk about Pistons. I don't know. What do you think?
One more thing before we move on. I'm just scrolling through the names of who's in the race because I wasn't gonna try and just act like I knew what I was talking about, but there's a guy named Stingray Robb. That's what it said. And I think I might have to pull for him just because that's an awesome name.
That's the kind of name you give to your kid if you know that they're going to be a race car driver. I mean, that is the perfect race car driving name. And Mimsy 313, come on. No, this is sad. He's saying NASCAR is the off-season sport of comfort. No, this is IndyCar. NASCAR is, you watch that out in the, in a rural Walmart on the free TVs that they got on display in there. That's where you watch your NASCAR. IndyCar is for, the more let's just say cultured individuals. I shouldn't say that. I apologize. NASCAR is a great series. It's a fun one to watch. I gotta be a little snobby sometimes just for fun. But yeah, open wheelers, IndyCar racing, that's the way to go. That's my off-season comfort sport, at least until the Tigers get competitive, and we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Are you guys watching the Eastern Conference Finals? I have a little bit. Honestly, it's just been disappointing for what could have been. I don't know. I mean, the Knicks are playing amazing basketball these days. I don't know if the Pistons really would have put up too much of a fight against them, just to be completely honest with you guys. But I do think that the storylines would have been a little bit more fun than the inevitable, can James Harden get through the Knicks to the NBA Finals? No, that's just not as interesting as the rematch, what's been building all season. You almost had it. It was right there. F1 better than NASCAR, Piper 4-2-3. I agree with that, but IndyCar is better than F1. So, I just got to keep staking my claim on that. Of course, we have to bring up Ricky Bobby, another fantastic name. Blake, but have you been watching the Eastern Conference Finals at all?
Yeah, I have. I didn't catch, we're recording on Sunday morning. I didn't catch Game 3 on Saturday night, but I've watched it. Other than that, Game 1 was incredible. An incredible collapse from the Cavaliers, but just an incredible game all around. And yeah, it's unfortunate. It's looking like a 3-0 sweep. The Western Conference Finals is certainly been more interesting, other than that Game 1 was just awesome. But yeah, the Knicks are really rolling at a historic pace right now. Who knows what would happen if the Cavs didn't collapse in game one, but I think either way, even if Cleveland held on to that one, the Knicks would have taken care of business in like 5 or 6 games because they're just rolling right now. I mean, I don't really think there's any way that they don't advance to the finals right now. And I think the 2 teams out west are the ones to beat. So it'll be interesting to see them go up against them. I hope that series doesn't turn into a quick one. But yeah, I think the Pistons would have maybe put up a better fight. But yeah, this Knicks team is just playing incredibly right now.
Yeah, they are. And let's take the 5 minutes here and just talk a little bit about that game 7 because we haven't yet and we've had time to digest it. So I'm kind of curious on your takeaway, right? I mean, it was a very good series. It was a good 7-game series up to that last point. Very entertaining. If you're just a general NBA fan, that Pistons Cavs series would have been fun to watch. And the Pistons obviously had an incredible season overall, but to have it kind of end on a whimper like that. I have them. I don't necessarily want to say they just kind of rolled over, but I mean they got hit and they didn't really respond for frankly the first time all season. Did this Pistons team kind of take a punch to the mouth and not at least get back up from it? So how do you think about that? How do you kind of take that in as a person who talks about the Piston as a fan, right? Like, how do you reconcile that with the season that we had?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that we're recording after we had some time to digest it because I really think that it was definitely disappointing. But if you look back on the season as a whole, if we didn't know anything we did over the course of the season, and you would have told us that we would be 1 win away from the Eastern Conference Finals, I think anyone would take that. But once you're in the moment and after this team wins 60 games, they get the 1 seed, they have a game 7 on their home floor, I think it just feels like there was a little bit left on the table, which is fine. And I think the ceiling of this team, where you look at what the Knicks are doing right now, was probably the Eastern Conference Finals, which I think we were talking. I mean, there was some, obviously, when you're the 1 seed, there's some hope that you can get to the NBA Finals, and you never know what would happen in a 7-game series with. I mean, I don't think New York has really went up against a defender like Ausar Thompson. So I think the Pistons could have had somewhat of a chance, at least a better chance against the Cavaliers. But yeah, with game 7 specifically, I think the story of it was just the offense. I mean, the talking point throughout the postseason was Jalen Duren's lack of production. Tobias Harris made up for that for a great chunk of the postseason. He had an off game and sort of tapered off toward the end of that series. I mean, until Ausar Thompson made that corner 3, like right before halftime in game 7, the Pistons starting forwards didn't have a bucket. And it's just tough to win a game when you're getting that little production from 2 of your players and really your entire front court when you had Duren in the mix. And I think Cleveland just beat them. Like, Jared Allen dominated down low. He had a great game. And then you get 23 points off the bench from Sam Merrill, and Donovan Mitchell had a great game too. So I think maybe it was a little bit of running out of gas, but overall, I think the Cavaliers just beat them. And there was that Kenny Atkinson said that their game plan was just to go away from whoever was guarding, or whoever Ausar Thompson was guarding. So I think that played into it a little bit, but I think the Cavs secondary creators offense outside of their stars was able to perform, and the Pistons weren't, and they were never really able to get into the game, get the crowd into the game. So definitely a disappointing way to go out, but you definitely have to take a step back and just appreciate the season as a whole.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that there's maybe a little bit of playoff experience that kind of came into play there, right? Like Pistons fan 11 saying that Game 7 would have been a learning experience for them and for the front office too. I completely agree. I mean, like they just. I don't know, like Jared Allen's been around the block here in the playoffs before. Evan Mobley's played a lot of playoff minutes early in his young career here. James Harden, obviously, Donovan Mitchell, obviously. Like they kind of came into that Game 7 with the right mindset of it, and they came out quick. I think when they came out that way, maybe it's a little bit of running out of gas from the Pistons side of things. Maybe it's a little bit of just, all of the things that could go wrong begin to go wrong. But like, Cade had a poor game. Duren had a poor game, which was a little unusual after he kind of stacked two like fairly good games together, especially like Game 6. I thought he looked really good, really aggressive, and maybe was figuring some things out. You mentioned Ausar Thompson taking a corner three, and then he took another one in the second half. Yeah. It's like, what is that? That's not the offense the Pistons wanted. So it just felt like everything was kind of falling apart for them, and I do think that that's a learning experience. This is their second Game 7. When you're a veteran, you're playoff tested, and you got a team filled with those types of guys, you kind of expect that you're going to come out a little bit differently in that sort of game. That's when the playoff experience is supposed to matter, and I think it did there. So, like, yeah, it's shocking, it's surprising how they lost that game. As Piper 423 saying, I agree with that. Like, it was a surprise. I wasn't expecting to go and to turn on the TV and watch that type of performance. But at the end of the day, as bad of a taste as that's going to leave in all of our mouths as Pistons fans, I don't think it necessarily ruins the season that was. And now that we've had some time to digest it, I think that's where, at least for me, more of my focus has turned to looking at, like, wow, they win the 60 games, how much fun they were all year long, the crazy 3-1 comeback against the Magic, the amazing performance we had been seeing out of Cade Cunningham, out and up to that Game 7 performance there where he really struggled. I mean, there were so many positives here of this year. It really was, learning experience. I'm with Pistons fan 11 on that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with, we'll talk a bunch about the offseason, but I think just how Trajan Langdon handled the trade deadline and everything he said publicly just shares how he feels about where this team is. And I think this, if it wasn't clear before, it's certainly clear now, like where the holes on this team are, where we're lacking, and what they need to continue being a contender in the Eastern Conference and take a next step to go to the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals and compete for a championship in the next few years. So I think that's obviously a positive that you can take out of this. I mean, the roster was always going to be different next year, just with some big decisions you have to make. Tobias Harris's contract is up. Hopefully he's able to come back on a lesser deal, but I just think it's more clear than ever, which is crazy because we've been talking about it for a long time, but they just need someone else who can dribble the ball, provide some scoring, and just make up for that lack of shooting that you inherently have with Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson in your starting lineup. And I know Duren's a big discussion point as well. I mean, I'd be pretty shocked if Ausar Thompson doesn't get an extension, certainly not like a max extension. And I think Duren is going to be here for the long term as well. Who knows what the number is? We'll see what that comes out to be after the postseason and everything. But I just think it's so clear that you have to add some additional juice on the offensive side, whether that's through free agency, a trade. We'll see, but that just has to happen over the offseason.
Real quick, before we get into some looking forward to that offseason, I do want to talk just very briefly about some of the missed opportunities, right? Because like Richard says, and this is where I am. The series probably should have never gotten to 7 games against the Cavs. So Richard brings it up. Game 3 was really where they lost that Cavs series. I agree. I think it was game 3. I think it was where that was Cade's like 3 turnovers in a row. Right. And then he goes to the bench after they had just gotten the lead. The 3 turnovers are happening. They now lose the lead. Cade sits down, needs a breather, and they can't really recover from that. And then, Pistons fan 11 talking about game 5 too. That's another good one. The no call on Ausar Thompson in game 5. Yeah, that would have gotten them free throws and should have been a call. I do agree with that. But I'd also say, the Pistons just should have made like a shot in the last 3 minutes of game 5, and they're coming out of that. And again, this all kind of goes to that playoff experience, right? Max Strus is a great player, makes winning plays, and you know what? He got Cade Cunningham at least 2 out of those 3 times, and one of them, Cade just made a really, really dumb mistake. Like he's going to learn from that. These guys are all going to learn from that. I think game 5 the same way. But you were mentioning some contract stuff. So why don't we just start there? The biggest contract thing hanging over the Pistons right now is probably Jalen Duren. Now, in the postseason availability, Trajan Langdon said that he's looking forward to getting a deal done with Jalen Duren. He also mentioned an Ausar Thompson extension. We're going to get into that too. So Bobby Marks from ESPN, he thinks, and he said 5 years for $180 million total. Revkin brings this up in the DBB comments. So what would you think about that figure there for Jalen Duren? Do you think that that's maybe realistic? Do you think it might be a little bit more than that? Where do you fall here on a potential Jalen Duren extension?
So that's like right around Alperen Sengun's extension. His was 5 years for $185 million. And I mean, just with context, I mean, the cap changes every year. I know it's going to go down a little bit. So, I mean, I like the sense that it's not near a max number. I think that would, especially with when you add Ausar Thompson into the mix, that would really, I guess, just hamper your flexibility moving forward. So I think Duren not signing for a maximum deal, especially if he ends up on an all-NBA team, is big for the franchise moving forward and able to address some needs elsewhere. I mean, just like gut feeling, it does feel a little rich still for me just because of what he is. And we know just the flaws that I don't think are going to magically disappear over the course of the next year. He's still super young. He can still grow, but I don't think he's ever going to be that guy that you trust putting the ball on the floor, and is certainly not like shooting from distance. And like Sengun certainly has a lot more to his game offensively. I mean, Duren's definitely a much better rim runner, but I think Sengun is like more the center of the Houston offense, and he has a ton of help as well. But just off the gut, like if you told me like 5 for 150, 160, I think that sounds right to me. But I mean, I think you want to get a deal done. So if that's where you meet in the middle, I don't think it would be a huge overpay. It's just like a little bit too much for me.
I'm going to take a totally different angle on this one for Jalen Duren, Blake, because like I get what we saw in the playoffs. And actually, why don't I pull in a question here? This is from T-Dog81 in the Pistons DBB comments. But he says, I understand all the hate towards Duren for his postseason performance, but what about what he did during the regular season? The Pistons don't get 60 wins without him. And this is ultimately where I'm at, all right, when it comes to a Jalen Duren contract extension, because I think that that all of the talk kind of pushing him down on an extension into the like low 30s on average annual value, that 5 for 180, that's about 36, okay, from Bobby Marks. So pushing him down even lower than that, I think it's incredibly reactionary. This is a player, Jalen Duren, at 22 years old. He averaged 19 and a half points, 10 and a half rebounds, and 2 assists. It was 1.6 stocks, which is an improvement for him. Well, actually, it's right on that level, but still, his defense was better. I think his defense was a little bit better, but it's less important now because of the player he is offensively. So from the floor, 65% on 11 and a half shot attempts per game, 65%. He got to the free throw line 6.1 times per game, shot 75% from the free throw line. And the 2 assists that he averaged this season, it was actually a decrease from what he did in previous years. So 2.7 the year before, 2.4 before that. I think Jalen Duren is a player that is absolutely on the rise. Offensively, he's ridiculous. I get what he showed there in the playoffs, and that's concerning. It wasn't good. It was a massive decrease. What he did in the playoffs this year, 10.2 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2.1 assists, and his field goal percentage went all the way down to 51.4. So that's not good. But this was the first time he had real expectations for him in a playoff setting. Last year, he actually performed pretty well in the playoffs, I thought, and that was kind of a springboard into the season we saw this year. But what he did in the regular season, guys, was unbelievable. And it's not just the efficiency to me. It's not just the efficiency. It's not just the scoring. It's the fact that when Cade Cunningham goes down with a collapsed lung, and everyone is writing off the Pistons aren't going to get to 60 wins. The Pistons aren't going to be the number 1 seed because Boston's so good and they just lost Cade Cunningham. Who carries them to wins? It's Jalen Duren. They run the offense through Jalen Duren. He shows a little bit more off the bounce, right? He continues to show a little bit more playmaking ability. They have him not only operating in DHOs, but now he's getting even more of those ISO possessions at the top of the key. Jalen Duren is, to me, this team's second star. He's 22 years old. He had a really rough playoff experience. To me, I don't think he lost any money in that playoffs. I think he could have earned more money. I think he could have earned more money in the playoffs if he really went nuts and helped carry this team like through to the NBA Finals as an appearance. If he was averaging like 22 and 11 in the playoffs, I think now you're talking about him actually getting that max contract extension. But here's the thing. The rumors around the trade deadline, they were never a max deal for Jalen Duren. It was always right around 5 for 200, 5 for 210. So you're looking at like 40 mil or just over. I still think that's the range for him. I think you're seeing anywhere in 5 for 190 to 5 for 210. That's probably where it's going to end up. And I think he's going to be worth it. I mean, he's gotten better every season of his career. He has improved. I think in my book, he's gotten better. His offense has taken an unbelievable leap. He's flashed some off the bounce ability. The max deal's somewhere around like 45, 47, I do believe. Right, Mimsy threw him through.
It would like go up if he's all NBA.
Yeah, right. So I don't think he's going to get to that, but I don't think he was ever going to get to that. And if you look at where he's been improving, it's not just that he's a Cade Cunningham merchant. All right, he's not. He was creating a lot of his own looks. In fact, part of the reason that Cade Cunningham's turnovers went down this season was because Cade didn't have to be the offense. They were able to look to Jalen Duren. He could create things for himself and for others, and that was a big reason why they go on and win 60 games. So, yeah, he's flashing some ISO ability. He's tough to guard with the ball in his hands in that mid-range area. He's flashed a mid-range jump shot. I think that's probably going to be coming along after this offseason. Jalen Duren is this team's second star. And I think you look at trying to augment this roster around the trio of him, Ausar Thompson, and Cade Cunningham. But I think that's where you're looking at. So if you want to find, if you want to say the Pistons need another guy to average like 17 points per game, great. I agree with you. If you want to say the Pistons need a guy to like take over that second option, I totally disagree. So all this is to say, I don't think Duren's taking a discount. I don't think that he lost a ton of money. I think he's just as vital to this team's performance and to their future as he was before the playoffs started. And you're going to make a ton of value by looking at a 22-year-old and saying, hey, yeah, he struggled in the playoffs. He's probably going to do better. And I'm going to pull up a list here, but I want to get your reactions here before I do that.
Yeah, I guess like my question is like, so if you throw the playoffs out the window, do you think that Jalen Duren would have been okay with anything less than the max? Like, or do you just think that his position, a center that doesn't stretch the floor, isn't going to be a max player in this current day? Because I mean, Sengun is just the best comp to me, and he didn't sign for a max. So like, I guess I just wonder if the playoffs don't have that much weight in negotiations, which I think they will at least have some. Would Duren and his team be like, okay, maybe we can get more money elsewhere and force the Pistons' hand into signing with a cap team? I know there are not many of those, or just entering unrestricted free agency next year. So like, I don't know. I like, maybe the playoff performance was like good into getting into what that number should have been, I guess, is where I'm landing.
Yeah, I could see that. I just, in terms of what the contract value would have been if like the playoffs went totally different, I just, the leak that came out right after the deadline when he was playing really well of like, hey, they're looking for, 5 for 200. That's not coming out of the Pistons, right? That's Jalen Duren's agent pushing out a number. So if his agent was pushing out that number, I think that it's a stretch to say they were looking for a max extension, because they very clearly were not. I want to pull this up real quick. OG unnamed YouTube user. How many times did Jalen Duren's big games come against good defenders? I will say I don't have that out in front of me, but I do remember when Cade Cunningham went down and the Pistons were winning those games without him, that those wins and coming on, with Jalen Duren really carrying the load were against defenders like Draymond Green and Kristaps Porzingis, Alex Sarr, Evan Mobley. They had a Cavs win in there, if I remember correctly. Like there were some very, very good defenders, but I don't have all of them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to pretend that I do. Here's what I wanted to bring up, though. All right, I pulled these up a little bit ago for the DBB Slack, but Dwight Howard's field goal percentage dropped 7 percentage points when he first made a playoff appearance. Carmelo Anthony in his rookie year, 6 points per game decrease when he went into the playoffs. And then these last two are probably more interesting. So Kevin Garnett in his second playoffs, 3 less points per game, half the stocks. And then probably the more interesting one, Blake Griffin in his second playoff experience, 5 fewer points per game and 8 percentage points worse from the floor. My point is just that this happens. All right. Young players struggle in the playoffs, especially when they have big expectations placed on their shoulders. So, am I worried that Duren didn't play all that well in the playoffs? Yes, I think that that's a problem, and it's possible that that's just what it is. But it's really not all that likely that the 22-year-old is just never going to figure out the NBA playoffs. I think especially on a team now where you can say he's probably going to continue to get more playoff experience moving forward. So I think he's going to figure this out. I would bet more money on the idea that he is going to take that as fuel for this upcoming offseason. I think it's going to eat away at him. He's going to be pissed off, ticked off about it for all of these summer months, come back an even better player for the experience. And honestly, I'd say the same for the entire team here with how the playoffs went. So everyone who's not named Cade Cunningham is probably doing a lot of soul searching right now, because they shouldn't have had this playoff run go the way that it did. But yeah, that's my Duren position. I think that they pay him. I think he's just as important as he was before the playoffs started. And I'm just not all that. I'm not convinced that the 22-year-old peaked. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I don't. You see all the overreactions because certainly he hurt them in the playoffs. But I don't think it's to the point where you let him walk, where you trade him. I think you have to take into account what he did over the regular season. And yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if they don't get a long-term deal done in the offseason. I saw some comments in the chat about length. I think that's the more interesting part of it. Like if they don't go full 5 years, what that looks like. But I think if like 5 for 170, 180 upwards, it definitely makes you think twice about it a little bit as that number gets higher, obviously. But I think what he's shown in the regular season is certainly well worth an additional deal. Just hopefully it is favorable for both sides, so the Pistons can maintain that flexibility to address the roster needs elsewhere after you do pay your players that you want to keep as part of the core for the long term.
I want to pull this up. So OG, unnamed YouTube user, said, so when he was asking the question about 25 points or more and who was playing, who Duren was playing against in those games, and apparently Sam Vecini had a list. So I just pulled up the game log basketball reference. But 36 points against Washington. Alex Sarr, very good defender. 33 against Dallas. Who's Dallas's center these days? That wouldn't have been against AD.
That was in November. So if Gafford was available, everyone was hurt this year.
Yeah, so that's not one. But 33 against Cleveland. That's interesting. 31 against Indiana. So that would have been pre-Zubac. So that's one not all that impressive. Jakob Poeltl in Toronto, 31 points against them. Nick Claxton in Brooklyn. Nick Claxton, not an amazing defender. 30 against Memphis, 30 against the Pelicans, 29 against Oklahoma City, 26 against Portland, 26 against Chicago, 26 against Brooklyn again. You got a 26 against Atlanta and 25 against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs in less than 30 minutes. So point is, I don't want to just outright disagree with Sam Vecini, but there are some good names in there. It wasn't like he was just going up against a bunch of nobodies and one putting up those deals. And yeah, Piper says Sarr is a good shot blocker, not a defender. I don't know if you can necessarily separate those, but Alex Sarr being a very good shot blocker means that, well, that's a good matchup for success against Jalen Duren in theory. Anyway, we should move on. We'll be arguing about Jalen Duren all year, or all show, if this keeps up. I know that it's a big talking point right now, but we both got our piece out. Would you like to get a last word in before I move on, Blake?
No, I think we covered it, but yeah, I think any overreaction, Piper mentioned in the chat, if he wants a max and someone else offers it, let him walk. I don't think the Pistons would offer him the max, and there aren't many teams who are able to do that. I think the Nets are the only true cap space team, and the Pistons and some other teams can open space up based on their holds, but I'd just be pretty surprised if Jalen Duren doesn't work out some sort of extension to remain with the Pistons for the long haul of this offseason. So once we know what the length and what the number is, I think we can dive into it a bit more. But yeah, I also don't think Langdon would do anything that would completely hinder his flexibility moving forward too.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in too, with the other teams potentially, making offers at Jalen Duren. Nobody can offer more than the Detroit Pistons. That's partly because the Pistons can offer that 5th year, but also because the maxes are just a little bit different when you're signing your own guy versus a general free agent contract. As well, though, if you're already looking at the Pistons saying okay, maybe our internal range is 36 to 40. In terms of average annual value, if another team comes along and says, we'll give you 42, I mean, that's really not the end of the, you know what I mean? That's really not a huge gap, huge difference. So I wouldn't be too worried about that personally. Things could change, could be proven wrong, but that's where I'd be with that. Let's shift over. The other lightning rod of Pistons conversation these days, at least oddly enough in national media, even though that, yes, big news, Ausar Thompson makes All-NBA first team for defense, which was a big congrats for him. He much deserved best perimeter defender in the NBA, and you saw that in the playoffs. But we've got race to the bag here in the DBB comments asking how much will that honor boost his next contract value?
I mean, I think I want to say not too much, because I think his next contract value already considers the type of defender he is. And obviously with a player like Ausar, who has all the flaws offensively, he's not going to shoot the ball, everything like he was never going to be anywhere close to the max. I think maybe, I mean, I mentioned the 5 for 150 number for Duren. Maybe it's somewhere like that with Ausar, or even a little bit less. I mean, 5 for 150 is 30 a year, which I think is probably about right. So, I don't know if Ausar helped his contract value in the postseason, because I think it was just already almost at the ceiling of what it could have been for a player like his archetype. I mean, I think maybe he gave himself some more talking points into how much value he brings if him and his camp want to try and talk that deal up. But I mean, I think the Pistons have the counter argument against it, but just when an opposing coach or when a team adjusts their game plan to simply just get away from you because you impact the game that much, and you can pretty much completely take one of the other team's leading scorers or facilitators out of the game, I think that just talks to the value that Ausar Thompson brings. And yeah, I think it'll probably be around that 150 range, or somewhere around 30 a year, which I think you would have done going into the postseason, and I think is probably still where you're at now. But not to discredit what Ausar Thompson did over the playoffs by any means. I think it's just the type of player he is puts him in a very specific bucket.
Agreed. And so Richard says that defensive players usually don't get the max, so I don't think that all defense really impacts his deal. I would generally agree with that. So here's what I did. I just went over to Spotrac, and I just sorted average annual value of NBA contracts that are presently held by current NBA players. And I was scrolling, trying to find the first player that I would say confidently is really defense only. Not just defense first, defense only. Because if you're talking about defense first, Kawhi Leonard belongs on that list. Jarrett Allen belongs on that list. OG Anunoby, Aaron Gordon. These are all players that are fantastic defenders, but they offer a little bit more offensively. So I scrolled for a while, mind you. But eventually I found one. And that would be Jalen Suggs of the Orlando Magic, 23 years old, and he's being paid $30 million a year in average annual value. And I think if you are Ausar Thompson, that is a pretty good goal, right? If you're his agent, that's probably what you're going to bring up. You're going to say, hey, Jalen Suggs signed that big contract extension. He's getting $30 million in average annual value per year. My client, he's a better defender, right, than Jalen Suggs is. And he's more durable. Jalen Suggs has had a lot of injury issues. Now, Jalen Suggs, I would argue, is probably a little bit more of a positive offensively. He can be a streaky shooter. He can do a little bit more in the playmaking department. He can kind of pseudo-operate as a point guard, where really Ausar Thompson isn't at that kind of level as a playmaker yet, though he is a pretty good passer, especially in transition. So I would say that some of those things probably wash out. I would likely, it just seems like that's probably where you're going to see Ausar Thompson's deal. To me, I think that's the flag that they're going to bring up. So somewhere around that $30 million range. And assuming that they do that, that really does lock up your core, doesn't it? I mean, if you're looking, you got Cade being paid what he is, and I'll find that here in a second. But Jalen Duren getting his, we'll just call it 38, and then Ausar Thompson getting 30. Cade's at 53 in average annual value, not cap hit per year. I'm just talking AAV. There's your big three. And I think what's really interesting about that, Blake, and we can talk about this for a second, is that's a really unique big three. It presents some unique challenges. I don't think that the challenges are impossible to overcome, but you've got your one main guy who's the do everything offensive player and a pretty good defender. You've got a center who, as you mentioned, not a 3-point shooter, probably going to get a mid-range jumper here or there sometime soon, and a good ISO player, but not a shooter. So you're thinking more into that, like, I don't know. I've been liking Jalen Duren to like an Amari Stoudemire type. I think that that's still where I'm going to land. And then you've got this incredible defensive player out on the wing in Ausar Thompson. But that third guy, he's not a scorer. Usually when you're looking at the hierarchy of these really good teams, right, you've got your first player who's your best player. He's scoring the most points. Your second best player scoring the second most points. Third best player, third most points. And you could make an argument that the Pistons' second best player is going to be scoring like the fourth or fifth most points as Ausar Thompson. Their third best player is really their number 2 option. And it is a real big, I think, point of this offseason would be to get another guy who could maybe score like 17 a night to help round that out. And he's going to be what, your fourth best player?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting, right?
It is. It presents some challenges for sure, and it'll be really interesting to see how they work around it, because I think the answer these past 2 years since Langdon got to town was give Cade Cunningham some spacing, bringing in shooters. I mean, obviously you signed Tobias Harris, who isn't like a shooter. He posts up, he does a lot more than that, but the Malik Beasley signing, Duncan Robinson, Tim Hardaway, you can go down the list. I think, and like, I don't want to discredit Duncan Robinson or even Beasley or anything, because they did more than shooting when they're here. But I think you need to get someone that can also run the offense for a bit, and maybe just take a little bit of that pressure off of Cade Cunningham. I mean, it's hard to find guys who can dribble, pass, shoot at an affordable price like we're talking about now that you have these contracts locked in. So, I mean, I think it's less likely that you're going to have someone that's maybe a homegrown talent grow into that. Dennis Jenkins did a great job this year, but I don't think he's going to be a long-term starter. I think he's a great bench piece. I think you need to make a trade to go and get someone that will fit in. And I mean, I think there are some free agent names too, like Kobe White would certainly help the cause. I don't think he's the answer by any means. But yeah, you need someone in that Tobias Harris spot, and I hope Harris is back, but maybe coming off the bench, who can certainly score and who hopefully can handle the ball and make some plays and just take some of that pressure away and make up for the flaws that Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson do have. So it puts the Pistons in a very specific spot, which might be some leverage for other teams in trades. And I don't think this front office is one to drastically overpay for anyone, but they have to have some very specific targets. I know there's been a lot of Trey Murphy talk. I mean, personally, I don't think Laurie is going to be getting out of Utah at any time soon. So I think there is a way that they can do it, but I think they're in a very specific spot, which can both be a good thing of knowing your direction and knowing what you need to take that next step, but also you're obviously in this hole, in this very specific bucket that not a lot of other teams are in, honestly.
I only want to add this little bit. I guess we could kind of call it foreshadowing. I mean, we've got all offseason to talk about this specific thing. I just think it's really interesting. This could work for the Pistons, in my opinion. I think that there's a little reason to be somewhat optimistic about the likelihood that the Pistons are able to find like this very specific type of player who fits their core really well, but really wouldn't fit elsewhere really well. And I'm going to say that because if you look at what this team needs, they need a player who can be the third best scorer on their team. And for most teams, that third best scorer, that's going to be your third best player or your second best player, right? It's someone that's going to be up there in your top 30. For the Pistons, it won't be. It won't be. And that opens you up. It really does. Because if you go on Spotrac, right, and you just look at players getting paid $30 million or less in average annual value, you're going to find a lot of these types of guys that could never be the number 2 or number 3 on a championship contender, right? And they're getting paid like that. Teams don't like to play offensive players that like they're good. They're a good offensive player. Maybe they're a good defender too, but they really can't be like that number 3. They really can't be that number 2 on the championship team when they're going to be the second or third best guy. But again, in Detroit, they won't be. They'll actually be the fourth best guy. They just need to put the ball in the hoop a little bit more than they otherwise would elsewhere. So you're thinking, like Anthony Simons, Pistons fan 11, brings that up. Yep, he would be one. He's getting $25 million in a season. Keegan Murray out of Sacramento, he's being paid $28. DeJounte Murray, $28 million in average annual value too. You brought up Trey Murphy, him as well. Though again, I'm with you. I don't think that he's really going to get moved. RJ Barrett, $27 million in average annual value on his contract this year. Jaden McDaniels, 26. I'm not naming these guys as like targets for the Pistons. I'm just talking about the caliber of player that tends to get that range of contract that the Pistons would be looking for. And if you put an RJ Barrett in the Pistons system right now, yeah, he's going to be, their third best scorer. But again, he's their fourth best player, right? It's a unique little quirk, right? But I think it can fall the Pistons' way. Josh Giddey, Christian Braun, Naz Reid, John Collins, Jabari Smith Jr. Like the list goes on. There are a lot of these types of guys that I think if you add them to the Pistons, they look better than where they are right now. And it's just because they're going to be in a lower pressure environment. They're not actually being asked to be that type of, one of the core group. They're just someone that augments it, that helps. So I think that this kind of zigging while everyone else is zagging, it might actually work for Detroit. They may have stumbled into something here. And I'm going to be really interested moving into the offseason to see how this all shakes out, because I think that's a role that they need. They need someone that can come in and get them like 17 points per game usually, and if Jalen Duren's having an off night or Cade's having an off night, they can go off for 30, right? Basically, find Tobias Harris from like 5 years ago. That's kind of what they need, or Tobias Harris in the playoffs, right? That's the type of player that they need. I think a lot of those guys are out there right now, and it's just kind of, can they find them, right? Can they bring them in for the right price? So, sorry, you look like you're looking up something. Do you want to add something in before we move on?
I was just looking at, like, I think we've mentioned most of the name. Like, to me, if you look at the free agents that are out there, it's like Anthony Simons, AO, and there's one other that I'm forgetting, but there could also be like Norm Powell is out there, and he's pretty much the same
18
age.
mil for Norm Powell.
Yeah, he's pretty much the same age as Tobias Harris. So
yep, 28.
There's some talk about that whole thing, but he scored 22 points a game in Miami last year, made his first All-Star appearance at 32 years old. I mean, I think that's a guy that you can look at, and there's not. So being the same age as Tobias Harris got like 26 mil when he was 31, maybe turning 32. Norm Powell turning 33. I don't think he's going to get near that, but he obviously still has that offensive juice. I mean, just had his 2 best seasons of his career the past 2 years. So that's one, but also just going through free agents, I think, is doing a little bit of a discredit as well, because there's probably a trade out there that would make sense. I mean, the Trey Murphy one we can dig into a little deeper later, but there could be something that pops up that we're not even thinking about. And I think the Pistons do have some valuable pieces that they would be able to put in a trade package, and we'll see where that lands. But yeah, I think essentially point is, like you said, I think it's doable. It just, they're in a very, very specific bucket, which is interesting, and it's kind of a nice place to be, just because not too long ago you needed so much, and you certainly have your number one guy figured out, which is the biggest problem for so many teams across the NBA. So I'm interested to see how they go about it. But I think there is a path to improving this team to what they need to be able to take that next step.
All right, last thing, just because, sorry, excuse me, just because I think this is kind of fun. We're all Pistons fans. We're all doing the same thing right now, right? We're all looking through the league, trying to find guys that might be a fit for Detroit. So my suggestion to all of you guys listening that are doing that are looking for fits for Detroit, try to find, because Blake, you brought up the trade market, try to find somebody who in the next year or so is going to need a raise. They're going to need a contract extension. And they're the type of player that teams aren't usually going to want to extend near $30 million, right? So a guy who's a good offensive player, good scorer, maybe he's a good defender too, maybe he's a good playmaker, but he's not so good that he's got this reputation of like, yeah, that's a future number 2 option, or yeah, that guy can be like the 3rd best player on a championship team. That's the type of player that you bring in to like take that next step, right? Those guys don't usually get paid big money. And usually they're not the type of players that teams want to extend in the first place. So I'm thinking like Dylan Brooks. He's getting paid $21 million in average annual value. He's going to need a contract extension soon, and he's certainly outperformed that $21 million of average annual value. Will Phoenix want to pay him like 35? Probably not. So maybe you could get him in Detroit, right? Maybe they want to move off of him. Jaime Jaquez Jr. out of Miami. Just averaged 15, 5, and 5 off the bench for them. Restricted. He's going to be a restricted free agent next year. Are they going to want to pay him somewhere near $30 million? My guess is no. But the Pistons might. It might make sense for the Pistons to sign a guy like that, or to trade for a guy and give him an extension. It is kind of my point. If he can be close to 30, but not over. So like, look for those types of names. I think that that's really the sweet spot for Detroit. Norm Powell would be another one. Like you brought up, that age thing's going to be a big part of it. All right, so we've gotten a couple of questions on potentially choosing between Duren and Ausar Thompson. So we got to talk about that. This is from Epic Wayne. I'm going to read off all of these. All right, so this is from Epic Wayne. It says Nate Duncan of Dunked On is insistent that the Pistons trade Ausar Thompson this offseason, and Sam Vecini was pointing in that direction potentially as well, though I do believe he ultimately said, and Bryce as well said that, well, if you had to pick, you'd probably trade Jalen Duren. So Epic Wayne's question, if you had to choose between Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson, who would you keep? We also have let's see, Sports Time here saying, what is your opinion on saying the Pistons need to choose between Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren as well? And then we've got our Pistons fan 11, our guy here, saying if you could only keep one for the long term, who would it be, Ausar Thompson or Jalen Duren? So first, answer the simple question, right? If you had to pick, who would you pick? But then let's answer the second question of, is this really a choice that they have to make? Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if I had to pick, I would pick Ausar, just because I think he's more of a anomaly across the league. I think him and his brother, for that matter, are some of the best athletes in the league, and Ausar is certainly the better defender of the two. And I think he just, I mean, you need wing defenders to be successful in this league, and guys who are just able to guard 1 through 4, 1 through 5. So like Ausar is just so flexible, and everything he brings on defense. I know all his flaws. I just think that is more rare to find across the league, and I love what he's brought so far. So I would lean him for this. But the second question of do they need to choose? I don't think they do. I think the only reason they would need to is if this front office was in the frame of mind, like, we cannot operate moving forward with 2 players of our core who don't shoot the ball, or we need a second true star alongside Cade Cunningham. And I'm talking about something along the lens of, would you make a trade for Kevin Durant last year or something like that? Like, I think that would be the only reason the Pistons need to choose. But I think that they're of the belief that they can compete with those 2 as a member of their core. So I don't think it's a choice that they have to make. And I don't think it's a choice that they will, because I think they're pretty comfortable with both of them moving forward.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you 100% on both of those. So, like, if I had to pick between the 2, I'd lean towards picking Ausar Thompson. And the way that the league is right now, with all of the amazing perimeter focused scorers, having the best perimeter defender is such a cheat code. I mean, you've got a guy that can match up with Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. You've got a guy that can match up with Kevin Durant, right? And Luka Doncic. Everybody, anybody. Ausar Thompson is that level of defender. So I think having that type of stopper is really important. It's really, it unlocks a lot of things for your team defense. And I would say too, like, he's really close to being, that, like, quote, generational defender. He really is. His athleticism's off the charts. His effort's off the charts. He's what he did this year in the playoffs too. I mean, you had an opposing coach after a 7-game series say that there was no offensive systematic change to make. The only thing that they could do was pass the ball away from whoever Ausar Thompson was guarding. That was a quote from an opposing head coach. And Jamal Mosley was feeling the same way after round 1. So that type of defender, I mean, this is Ron Artest, this is Dennis Rodman, this is Ben Wallace. Like, that's the type of defender that you're talking about with Ausar Thompson. So I think it would be foolish to move on from him, period. So Nate Duncan is, I'm just going to say, he's entirely wrong. And all respect to him and the Dunk Down podcast. I actually listen. They're a good show. But I'm just going to totally disagree with him there. And then for the second thing, like, I get that the playoffs went how they did, Blake. I do. Jalen Duren struggled. Tobias Harris had to step up and score like 20 points per game. And then when that finally went away, as you expected it ultimately would, because, Tobias Harris is an aging player. He averaged 13 points per game in the regular season. Like, when that finally did go away, then they really did struggle. Like, I get that that's how the playoffs were. I completely understand that, they were struggling with the spacing a little bit more than they did in the regular season. All this is true. They won 60 games. They were a top 10 offense and defense all year. They were a better shooting team after the trade deadline than they were before it. They did win a playoff series. They did take the Cavs to 7 games, and in fact, they probably should have won in 5 or 6. Again, I understand that the playoffs were what they were, and this team struggled in some very specific ways. But I don't think that we need to just forget the success that they had too, because the success is far more important. The number of teams that can go out and win 60 games is quite few. It doesn't happen all the time. So the Pistons were one of those, and they looked legit when they did it as well. I know that they weren't getting the national respect that maybe they deserve, but they were a legit 60-win team. It wasn't like they just lucked into it, right? They were that good. And yeah, Pistons fan 11, if Duren or Stewart show up, they beat the Cavs. I think if Duren and Stewart show up in general, you're looking at not going to 7 games in both of those first 2-round series. Like, they have holes on their roster that they need to fix. But this is a 60-win team with fixable holes with the core that they have. Like, you don't want to blow it up because you lost in 7 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. So pay your guys, keep your core, and yeah, add a little bit more spacing, add a little bit more scoring, right? Like, do the little things around the margin, find another player who can get you 17 points per game, find another ball handler, right? Do those little things and set yourself up well for the future to improve off of the 60 dang wins that you won, off of the Eastern Conference semifinals run that you went on, that no one was predicting you would, right? The Pistons are in so much stronger of a position than I think any of these more, I don't want to just say like national perspective, because that's really not what it is, but like outsider looking in, I think that most of these analysts are really undervaluing the strength of the position that the Pistons have right now. They're young. They have a lot of talent. They won 60 games, and they have some very fixable issues that they can solve without blowing things up. That is an incredibly strong position if you are Trajan Langdon. So, stick to it, right? Just try to make some of those adjustments to set yourself up well. And I think that one of those adjustments is not making this choice between your all-NBA first-team defense defender and your guy who, well, as Sports Time 2 says, might be all-NBA third team this season as well. Like, you don't have to move on from those guys. Find a way to help them all out. Don't make it worse just because you didn't get to the Eastern Conference Finals in the first year that you were technically a contender. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and just with Ausar, like, this team's identity all year has been one of the best, if not the best, defensive teams in the league. He's certainly a huge part of that. And I mean, just the premise that because he doesn't give you as much as you'd want offensively, you have to look elsewhere. I think this team without Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren is totally different. And they're not where they are. Obviously, if the playoffs went a little bit differently, I know that Duren specifically had a big impact on that. But I think you saw where this group can take you, and if you make the roster better around them, like, who knows how far you can get. I don't know if they're just one scorer away from the NBA Finals or anything like that, and those teams in the West I don't know what you can do to really beat them, but I think that the Pistons are in as good a spot as any team to be a contender in the East moving forward. I think there are a lot more questions around the Celtics. I mean, I know the Pacers are coming back, but losing their pick is a big thing. Like, I think the future of this franchise is in a good spot to make this iteration of this team sustainable over the long haul into a playoff contender. And I think any rash decisions to let Duren walk or think about trading Ausar Thompson would be totally reactionary, which I don't think this front office is very reactionary at all. So I think it's unlikely I get the conversation, but it just go the distance with the guys that brought you there, and hopefully they improve over time.
And just to build on that point really quickly before we get to the final question of the show, but like, you say correctly, the Pistons aren't one more scorer away from the NBA Finals. I agree with you. They're one more scorer away. They are Cade Cunningham improving his ball handling and his ball security. They are Jalen Duren finding a mid-range jump shot and making his isolation game just a little bit, tightening up his handle just that little bit more. So now he can make that ISO game more transferable from the regular season to the playoffs, because it did work in the regular season. Now he's got to make that leap. So you add a little bit tighter handle, a little bit of that elbow jump shot. Suddenly he's really a threat there with the ball in his hands in the mid-range. You're an Ausar Thompson away from finding something beyond being a cutter offensively to be able to, be a positive or at least a neutral on that end of the floor. And that could be as simple as he can make a free throw line jumper, or he can get to the foul line and make 70% of his free throws. Right. So in our live chat here, I saw there were a few comments talking about Ausar Thompson. He's kind of shying away from contact because he doesn't want to go to the free throw line. Imagine if he becomes a 70% free throw shooter, which he might. He can. That's reachable. I'd say that's more reachable than him getting a mid-range jumper. So if he can be a better free throw shooter, now he's not falling away from contact. If Ausar Thompson can get to the free throw line 4 times a game and make 3 of them, that's huge, right? That's huge. That's game-changing. If he can tighten up that handle just a little bit more too, that'll help him get to the line, get more drives and more finishes around the rim. Isaiah Stewart continuing to work on his 3-point jump shot. Right, Danis Jenkins taking a step forwards as a consistent shooter, because he was a little bit more streaky during this season. If he can be a consistent 3-point shooter, my point is this team's really young. They are that one scorer plus a lot of reasonable improvements from the young guys that they have away from making an NBA Finals appearance. That's what I would say, and I think that that's a really good position to be in. You're banking on improvement because all of these guys have improved every single year of their career. So it's not just, we're going to close our eyes and cross our fingers and our toes and wish that it happens. You've seen this happen from all of these guys every single year. There's no reason to expect that what they are at 23, 24, 22 years old is what they are always going to be. And so when they take that little bit step forwards, that team, the team's going to improve. When you add that extra guy, you're going to improve all that much more. And that's what I think is going to get you the rest of the way. You want to be homegrown like OKC. You want to be homegrown like the Spurs are right now, right? Like that's what you're looking for. And I think that the Pistons can achieve it. So I mentioned Danis Jenkins. Let's close on this. So we had a comment here from Sean Haddix. Do you guys feel like we're grading Danis Jenkins on a curve? He shot 36 and 27, so from the floor and from 3 respectively in the playoffs. If he was the 5th pick, we'd be calling that a complete bust. That's fairly true. And we have Art Vandalay 81 in the DBB comments saying, what do you guys think of the Danis Jenkins experience? What would be his potential next year and in the years to follow? So where are you at with Danis Jenkins here?
So just to add some numbers behind it, in the regular season this year, he averaged 9.3 points, 3.9 assists a game, shot 37.4% from 3 and 20 minutes a game. In the playoffs, bumped that up a bit to just under 23 minutes a game. He averaged 9.1 points, 3 assists, and shot 27% from 3. Is it a little bit on a curve? I would say yes, because in his second NBA season, if he was a top 5 pick, I think it would be expected that he would have a huge role in the offense for the type of player he is. And I'm saying this as Ron Holland just fell out of the playoff rotation, and we'll talk about him a little bit more, but just in prior years, how many times have we wished a 2nd round pick panned out, an undrafted free agent? You have to find those guys who are able to contribute, to add depth and make a run in the playoffs. We're seeing it right now with Oklahoma City and everything that AJ Mitchell brought them in the 2nd round, and just all the hits that they've had. I think we've been wanting those hits for Detroit, and I think Danis Jenkins is really the first that seemingly came out of nowhere and is a legit NBA player. Could he have played better in the playoffs too? Yeah. I also thought he made some pretty big shots and had some nice games in a period where the offense was questionable from everyone else besides Cade Cunningham and Tobias Harris at times. So I think you can expect some improvement from him next year, but also with everything that we're talking about in terms of the Pistons need another scorer in the starting lineup, I think that will have some sort of impact on Danis's role with the team. And obviously it won't completely go away, because if he comes off the bench, you need those guys who are going to score off the bench. But just as a ripple effect, I think that will have a little bit of an impact on him. But overall, I think he's just a success story for this organization, this front office, and bringing him in and letting him grow into the player he is now, because I think he's just a great depth piece to have moving forward.
Yeah, he is. And I think the safe answer is that, he's going to be a really, really good backup point guard for this team moving into the future. But here's what I'll say. Danis Jenkins in that Cleveland series, right? So you just pull up his playoff game log. He scored 19 points against the Cavs in that overtime loss in Game 5. He scored 17 in Game 7, and as where are we at? Richard brought up, Danis Jenkins was really the only guy that showed up in that Game 7 against the Cavs. He had a 16-point performance against Orlando in Game 7, where he shot 63% from the floor, 5 for 8, and he also went 4 for 5 from 3. In Game 6 against the Cavs, where he started, 15 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. He shot 5 or 11 from the floor, 3 of 7 from 3. He had another really nice game against the Cavs too, and this would have been, let's see. What game would that have been? That would have been Game 2, where he put up 14 points on 2 of 5 from 3, 6 of 14 from the floor. Game 1 against the Cavs, 5 of 13 from the floor, 12 points. And my point, he got better as the playoffs went on. He was really good, actually, in that Cavs series. And I think that the 2 games that he started were particularly impressive, as well as that Game 5 loss in overtime was particularly impressive. And if you look at his trajectory, right, last offseason, we're talking about a guy who was on a 2-way contract all the past season, really didn't log any NBA minutes, and he showed out really well in the summer league. And I remember we were having conversations like, man, I don't know what Danis Jenkins is going to do for the Pistons this year, but all I know is that he looked way too good for the summer league. He looked like way too good of a player for that summer league roster, when we were hoping like Marcus Sasser would be that type of performance, right? But instead it was Danis Jenkins. So we were kind of going, hey, could he be the backup point guard? Maybe. Well, he ends up being the backup point guard. He averages 17 points and 7 assists during the stretches where Cade Cunningham was out this season as a starter. He gets into the playoffs and he gets better as the playoffs go on, right? He really struggles in that Orlando series, has a breakout Game 7, looks really good against the Cavs. I know it wasn't all that efficient, but I'd say that, when he was starting defensively in that Game 6, that was a big deal. In my opinion, that was a big reason why they won that game, was they were able to lean on Danis Jenkins to, reliably get in the way of James Harden a little bit, keep Cade Cunningham out of that foul trouble. And actually, I was kind of excited in Game 7 when I saw that they started Max Strus, because I felt a little bit better about Danis Jenkins on Max Strus than on James Harden. But point being, it feels like we keep putting these caps on who Danis Jenkins can be, right? We think, well, it's a good undrafted find. He'll be a nice G League player and maybe like a third guard. Well, all right, he's had a nice season. He'll be a good backup, but he really can't be anymore. And with the way that he's improved year to year, with the way he's improved even within these playoff series, I don't want to put that limit on him. So I'm not going to say that I think he should be the starting 2 guard next to Cade Cunningham next season. I will say it's probably worth finding out if he can be. So I'd be somewhat interested in not necessarily running it back, maybe finding another guard who's kind of a combo guard, right, that you can bring in into the offseason that can give you competition, right? So maybe it's Duncan, Danis Jenkins, and some third player. And you're going to go into training camp and you're going to say, hey, let's see who comes out of that bloodbath, right? Let's see who comes out of that competition to start at that 2-guard spot, because Danis just keeps getting better. And when he's on, man, he's a really impactful player. Look at all of those Knicks games this season and the impact that he had on those in particular. Those stand out to me. Look what he did in, game 6 against the Cavs, right? Like Danis Jenkins, when he's playing well, swings games. He's a two-way player. He's a better defender than I think he gets credit for. He's another ball handler, which helps take pressure off Cade. And when that three-point shot is going, he's a guy who can shoot threes and get to the rim and finish, and also get to the free throw line. That, in theory, right, is a really great player to start next to Cade Cunningham. So the vision's there, and I'm not going to put it out of his reach. So I'm just going to say I can see it happening. I can see Danis Jenkins being the starter for this team next year. I can also see him continuing to be a fantastic backup point guard. I don't know which way that's going to go, but at this point in his career, with everything that we've seen, I think it would be a mistake to say anything other than, hey, he might actually become that starter, because he's gone over every limit we've tried to push on him so far, and he's really fun to watch. I love rooting for him. So I'm just going to say, hey, maybe he can be. And if he is, that's great. And if he's not, that's great too.
Yeah, we can definitely revisit that once we understand what the roster is going to look like next year and all the additions. The draft is behind us, free agency and everything like that. I could see it too. I think it's probably more likely he's a really good backup point guard, like there was some mention of in the chat, but he's outperformed everything so far. So why can't he outperform that expectation too? But Wes, we got to get you to the Indy 500. So do you have any closing words before
I can't get there at this point? I'd love to, but I would like to watch
the couch to watch the Indy.
We got to get all the pre-race stuff in. In terms of final word, no, I'm just I'm looking forward to this offseason. I think the Pistons are in a really good spot, Blake, and it's going to have some interesting storylines, right? Like, hey, we were just talking Danis Jenkins. What can he be, right? He's a guy that's improved every year. He's got another offseason where he's going to get to go back into the lab again. How does he come out of this knowing that the playoffs were kind of a struggle, right, for him, at least in that round one before he started picking it up? How does Duren respond to this playoff struggle that he just had? Does he kind of take that in stride, use it as fuel to really come back an even better player than he was this year? That would be exciting. I could see that happening. He seems like that type of guy. He was definitely forthright and upfront about the struggles he was having during the playoffs as they were going on. What can Cade improve this offseason? How does this roster kind of mold and change to continue to hopefully add some shooting and ball handling? I think that there are a lot of great storylines, and you're right. You brought up that the narrative, right, that the Eastern Conference next season is just going to be amazing. I don't get that either, right? You're saying skeptically with that. I'm right there with you. Like, yeah, the Pacers get Halliburton back, but like, Boston's getting Jason Tatum back. They had Jason Tatum down the stretch, and they still got bounced in the first round by a not very good Philadelphia 76ers team. The Knicks look good. I think the East is as good as it was. They're going to add another contender. They're probably going to lose one or two as well over the offseason as teams make adjustments. So I think that narrative was something that was true early in the season. It's no longer true. So the Pistons, they're sitting pretty. I think that there's just a lot of reason to be excited about what could be the future of this team. And I am looking forward to seeing how Trajan Langdon puts all of those puzzle pieces together.
Yeah, me too. And the season's almost over. We don't have to wait that long until the draft, free agency, and everything. So I'm excited to see how it all shakes out and how this team comes out next year. Because, and by my book, they're going to be a contender in the East for for years to come. So I'm excited to see how it all unfolds. But shout out to everyone for joining today and throughout this whole incredible season. It was a really fun ride, and excited to see where it goes moving forward in future years. So reminder that everyone can call our number to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points today. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.